The low hum of conversations filled the dimly lit restaurant, mixed with the clinking of glasses and the soft hiss from the kitchen. Ethan Cole sat in the leather booth, his dark tailored suit looking almost out of place in this cozy little seafood place tucked away in the corner of the city. His wristwatch, a custom Swiss piece worth more than most people's yearly rent, caught the faint glimmer of the overhead lights, but his attention wasn't on the time. It was on his son. Daniel sat next to him, knees pulled close, hands fidgeting with the edge of the napkin. 7 years old, small for his age, with hair that always seemed to fall over his eyes. His gaze was fixed firmly on the plate in front of him, a plate Ethan had thought might tempt him into eating something new. A whole lobster, beautifully prepared, steam curling into the air. But Daniel wasn't moving. Ethan leaned down slightly. "Buddy, you want to try a little? Just one bite?" His voice was calm, practiced, the same tone he used every time he tried to encourage his son without triggering the storm of resistance that often followed. Daniel didn't respond, his lips pressed together tightly, his fingers twisting the napkin harder. Ethan sighed and leaned back against the booth. He could handle hostile takeovers, high-stakes negotiations, and crises that could sink multi-million-dollar deals. But this was the battlefield where he felt powerless. His wife had left 2 years ago, unable to cope with the constant challenges that came with raising a child on the autism spectrum. Since then, Ethan had been both father and mother, protector and provider. But even with all his resources, he couldn't buy the one thing Daniel needed most: comfort in a world that often felt too loud, too bright, too unpredictable. As Ethan's frustration quietly brewed, someone stepped into the scene. She wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled neatly to her elbows, and a simple black apron. Her hair was pulled back into a bun, her posture straight but relaxed. She moved through the crowded restaurant with the kind of grace that didn't demand attention but earned it anyway. Her name tag read Amara. She stopped beside their table, her warm brown eyes landing first on Daniel. She didn't look at him like people usually did, with that awkward mix of curiosity and pity. She simply smiled, her expression easy, as if she understood more than she let on. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said softly, crouching slightly so she was at his eye level. Her voice was gentle, carrying no trace of hurry or expectation. "That's a big lobster you've got there. Have you ever tried one before?" Daniel didn't answer. He glanced at her for the briefest moment before looking back at the plate. "That's okay," she said, her smile never faltering. "You don't have to talk. I'm just going to help you with it, okay?" Ethan started to speak. "You don't have to," but she was already working. With careful hands, she took a small plate and began to break the lobster apart, her movements slow and deliberate. She made sure every piece was perfect, no shell fragments, no overwhelming chunks. Then she held up a small forkful, not pushing it toward Daniel, just letting it rest there in the space between them. "Here," she whispered, as if this was their little secret, "just one bite. You can spit it out if you don't like it. Deal." Ethan watched, hardly breathing. Daniel's eyes flicked from the fork to Amara's face. Something in her tone, or maybe the patience in her expression, coaxed him forward. Slowly, he opened his mouth. The fork went in. Daniel chewed cautiously, his shoulders still tense, but he didn't pull away. He swallowed. Then, without looking at either of them, he leaned forward again, a silent request for more. Ethan felt something sting behind his eyes. He couldn't remember the last time his son had willingly tried something new in public without breaking down. Amara kept going, breaking small pieces, offering them without rush. Between bites, she told Daniel little stories about the lobster, how they lived in the ocean, how fishermen caught them, how the chef cooked them. Her voice was soft and steady, almost like a bedtime story. By the fourth bite, Daniel's grip on the napkin had loosened. By the sixth, he was watching her with quiet curiosity. And by the time the plate was half empty, Ethan realized something astonishing. His son was smiling. Not the guarded, forced smile he sometimes gave when people told him to say cheese for photos. This was different, genuine, unscripted. Ethan's chest tightened. When the last bite was gone, Daniel looked at Amara and in a voice barely above a whisper said, "Thank you." Ethan nearly choked. His son almost never spoke to strangers. Amara's eyes softened even more. "You're welcome, sweetheart." She stood to leave, but Ethan stopped her. "You have no idea what you just did," he said quietly. She smiled faintly. "I just fed a little boy lunch, sir." But Ethan knew it was more than that. In that small act, she'd given him a glimpse of a world where his son could feel safe, understood, and unafraid. A world where patience was worth more than money. As she walked away, Ethan sat there, still stunned, watching his son lick his fingers and glance toward the kitchen as if hoping she'd come back. In that moment, Ethan knew one thing for certain: he would never forget her kindness.